All right, we're getting into this next conversation today, and our guest is seated. He is the CEO and Institute of Certified Secretaries. His name is N.Karanja, and he's here with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you doing?
Very well.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
All right, so we're getting into a conversation today, and we're looking at a number of things: ethical leadership and good governance. We're looking at renewing and restoring trust, morals, and securing the future. Many contexts upon which this conversation can be had. But before we get into that, CT is going to welcome you with today's proverb, right? A little bird told me that you were looking forward to that. So then you can tell us what you think about it and how you would interpret it.
Okay.
All right.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the Republic of Mali. Okay?
Yes.
The kitchen is older than the mosque.
The kitchen is older than the mosque.
Yes.
I think you first have to feed the stomach, even before you start thinking of other issues. First, deal with the basics of people. You could be thinking of very big projects, very big strategies. But if you have not addressed the basic thing, that is the food, the stomach, then even where you are taking them to pray, they may not be able to pray.
Well, there you go. Quite simply so, indeed. Okay, so we're looking at some very sticky issues, aren't we? When we talk about ethical leadership and good governance, before we talk about the restoration of certain things when it comes to morals and trust and securing the future, let's just do a broad definition of when we say ethical leadership and good governance. What are we talking about? We throw those words around all the time. And we say, yeah, we should have good governance. We must have ethical leadership. We must have ethical leaders. And we must have, we say it all the time. Well, from your perspective, what are we saying?
Thank you. When we talk about ethical leadership, we are looking at value-based decision making. That each and every decision you are making is based on certain fundamentals of certain values. For instance, when you talk of values, you are talking things like you are transparent, you are fair, you have integrity, and therefore any decision I'm making, I'm basing on that. But also secondly, we are also looking at the back of your mind, you should have the public good over your personal interest. And therefore, any decision that comes before you, you are first looking at, if in my capacity as the CEO of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, I'm looking at what is the best for my organization, for the society, and for my stakeholders, before I think on what should I benefit as Karanja. That is what ethical leadership is all about. Yeah.
Okay.
How do you determine what is good, right, wrong, not right? How? Beyond the Constitution.
Yeah, people have various lenses through which they determine what is good and right. And because I'm a believer and a person of faith, I want to give maybe from a biblical perspective. Similarly, if you belong to any other religion, you can put it from your own religious background. And I would say, for instance, from the Bible, there is this story of a gentleman called Cain and another one called Abel. Cain brought a sacrifice to God. Abel similarly brought one. The one for Abel was accepted. The one for Cain was rejected by God. Cain was very angry. And God approached Cain and asked him, if you did what is right, won't your sacrifice also be accepted? Or if you do what is right? The interesting part in that conversation, God never told Cain what the right thing was. Neither did Cain ask God, what do you mean that if I do what is right? So God, as the creator, has put in us something that tells you what is right and what is wrong. So every human being, whenever you are doing whatever you are doing, at the back of your mind, something tells you, you may call it conscious, you may call it whatever you may call, but something tells you inside you what I'm doing is right. Now, what happens in human beings is that sometimes we, despite that strong urge telling us, stop doing it, you continue and do it anyway. So over time, when you continue disregarding your conscience, which is telling you what is the right thing to do, over time, to become part and parcel of you, such that you no longer feel it. If it's somebody who is involved in murder or killing other people, they kill the first one. The first instance, they know there is something wrong. But as they continue doing it over and over, they feel nothing because their conscience has died. I think that's how I would describe the issue of good or right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this applies across board, but then specifically today we talk about governance and leadership. So then the rights then essentially has to be done by good leaders, from what you're saying. So how do we know that then good leadership is not being practiced or exemplified?
We, again, based on the same book I referred to earlier, the Bible, it says, you shall know them by their fruits.
Right.
You don't need to tell us you are doing the right thing. We actually see by our own eyes. And there is always results. I think these countries, some years back, we are told that choices have consequences.
Right.
You can make a choice on the action to take, but you cannot choose the consequences. The consequences come automatically. If I decide to eat, I don't choose whether I will be full or not. Automatically, I get full because that's how, those are the principles of nature. And therefore, what is right and what is wrong, we see it reflected by what is happening. For instance, I would say in governance, we say there are four major pillars of governance, or the four P's of governance. One of them is the purpose. For instance, what is the purpose if you're establishing an organization like this? Why are you establishing it in the first place? What do you want to do with it? In the case of a nation, that is determined in the constitution and other laws. Then we have the people. These are the people who will be implementing that, but also the stakeholders at various value chain stages. But also we have the processes that you are going to use to achieve the purpose. But most importantly, at the end, you want performance because there is a specific reason why you established this organization. Now, when there is a challenge in governance, you find problems throughout these four P's. You have the purpose could be very clear, but because the people are doing the wrong thing, then they are not following the right processes, and therefore you will not get the purpose, you will not get the end results. So in the case of a nation, we may have a good constitution, said is one of the best in the world, but we as a people, for some reasons, we have decided not to do the right thing.
Okay.
And when we decide not to do the right thing, then we don't follow the right processes in whatever we want to achieve. And for that reason, it doesn't matter how many things we may do, the workshops we may hold, the conferences we may do, we will not get the end result. That is the purpose. That is the performance. You will not get the end result because the process you've used is wrong. The people have decided to do the wrong things.
All right, let me just seek the guidance of a dictionary.
Yes.
Saying that morality is principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong or good and bad behavior. Some go further to define it as the extent to which an action is right or wrong. But if I go to the streets, you'll have arguments that right and wrong are relative. Now I'm looking at it as far as governance is concerned. You've seen the back and forth that citizens have had with the government of the day or the different administrations over the years. What electorates feel is wrong, the government would say is right for now. And we have the constitution and the law, but you've also seen judges who set precedents based on how they interpret certain laws. I'm a bit confused here in what really is right and wrong. And I know that we also have our national values as a country, all this enshrined. But now as a citizen who is just stuck in the middle of what is good for the electorate vis-a-vis what the government feels is right. Because you wouldn't say we have poor governance, is it? If what the government, according to its understanding, is right for the country.
Without maybe going to the philosophy of it,
Yes.
Which I spent some years studying on some of those issues of morality.
Yes.
Without going to the philosophy, maybe I want to approach it from a more practical perspective and say, in our case as a country, the laws are there, the constitution is there, defining what we need to do as a nation. There is no one who would steal resources from the public coffers and argue that according to them, that is right, because it's clearly indicated there. But also, as I said earlier, this country, by the way, we pride ourselves that majority of us are Christians. So every Sunday, we go to church. And the book which we ascribe to has certain parameters of determining what is right and what is wrong. And of course, stealing is not one of the issues that you would say that you are not very sure whether. So people don't do the wrong thing because they don't know is the wrong thing. People want to engage in that debate that right and wrong is relative, just for philosophical arguments.
Yeah. Okay.
But in reality, everybody knows what the right thing is. We just decide not to do it. And therefore, we don't do the wrong thing out of ignorance. We do it knowingly and willingly.
How does a people, and this is collective, is it possible to separate a people from its leadership when we then talk about morality, when we talk about good governance, when we talk about, proper leadership? Because I think that across board, everybody's a leader in one place or another. Can you divorce the people from leadership when it comes to this right and wrong and good that we are talking about?
From the 4 P's of governance I described earlier, that is the purpose, the people, the process, and what was the 4th one?
Oh, okay.
And the performance, the results. You see, the people there actually represent both the leadership and also the followers. It is impossible to separate the two because the leaders come from people. We are the ones who put those people, those leaders, in those offices. And they serve at our pleasure. Whether that, again, is philosophical or reality, but rather it is the truth. We are the ones who elect them. So the reason why, because there is no member of parliament, there is no MD, there is no CEO who come from the mass. They come from the same Kenyans. And therefore, unfortunately, even if you remove those ones who are still in office, unless we deal with the people, because the reason why we get wrong persons in the offices they hold is because the place where they are coming from is already rotten. So we need to deal with that because the people are the ones who produce leaders. Leaders come from the people, but also we elect them, and some of them, we elect them knowing very well that they are corrupt, they are bad, but because they have given us some money, 50 shillings, we anyway make the decision of electing them. Yeah.
The issue of morality, especially when it's just a point of discussion or a philosophical discussion, it's interesting insofar as it titillates the mind. Your mind is tickled, and you exercise it in trying to look at the wherefores of the subject of morality. But when you find yourself in a country like ours, where you have a constitution that is second to none, and everything you see around you in terms of political leadership and leadership in other spheres as well seem to make a mockery of that constitution, because it's like it never existed. And yet you realize that perhaps the existence of that constitution was to set something in place, something that would be aspirational, something that one could always look forward to achieving. What then does one do when those whom you have entrusted to ensure the implementation of it for the eventual better good being served for all the citizens. And you find that they are the people who seem to try their utmost to ensure that they abrogate the very thing that they swore to conserve, to obey, and this is my interpretation, and to implement. What then does one do?
It requires courage, and which unfortunately majority of us don't have that courage.
Where can I go and buy it?
So unfortunately you generate it from yourself. So there is a story given of this king who was very harsh with his subjects. And one guy came up with a scheme. He wanted to have the king humiliated. And he said, I can make a very expensive cloth for you, king, because the king wanted to look good before his subjects.
Yes.
And this person came and told the king, just remove all the clothes you have, because I have made imaginary clothes for you.
Imaginary?
Yes, imaginary. According to, and no one else can, everybody can see, but the people who cannot see, they have a problem. And they have a problem with you as a king. So they need to die if they cannot see the clothes that I'm giving you. So the king removed all the clothes. And this magician put some clothes, or imagined that he was putting some clothes on the king. And the person who was the closest advisor to the king, of course, looking at that, could not see the cloth, but for fear of the king, he said, you are extremely smart. All his advisors told the king, you are extremely smart, for fear that should we say he is not clothed,
yes,
then our neck will disappear. So he went to the crowd, and the crowd were astonished, our king is coming out naked. So there is always this challenge of who will tell the king that is naked. Unfortunately, most of us as leaders, whether it's myself as a CEO in the institution I lead, sometimes I surround myself with people who just tell me what I want to hear. So that even when I'm not upholding the morality you have mentioned, the people around me, because they want favor from me, they just want to tell me the way I'm looking good. But everybody else out there can see what you are doing is wrong. So that's why I said it calls for courage. It calls for courage for people to tell the leaders what you are doing is actually wrong. You are on a path to self-destruction, even as you destroy the society, even as you destroy the company or the organization that you are leading.
Now, building that, shaping our mindsets. I think a lot of this is inward, right? Someone made a joke once and said, when it comes to the Kenyan culture of corruption and bribery, you taking the bribe is part of being part of that criminal activity and giving it as well. But look at this instance where it was, I don't know if it was a joke or if it's funny anyway, that right from our childhood you're told, chukua hii nitakupea hii. Yeah. And I just want to see how that translates in what we're inculcating in our culture, because we boast of national values in our own constitution, but looking at what translates into our adulthood, I don't know what you'd say in that regard, because we are the same people who are leaders tomorrow. We are the same person, like you're the CEO. You came from a family. President Uhuru Kenyatta, just towards his end of his tenure, he spoke about the family unit and how much it held within itself. Now look at that small Kenyan and the character and the inculcation we're giving into them, what we call, do you even have a Kenyan culture? But anyway,
we do.
What we grow into, and saying this needs to change at this point. I mean, because I'm the same electorate. When I turn 18, we're talking about the IBC, we'll be voting. But what have you instilled in them that translates into the leaders you're seeing? Because you said we're a reflection. The leaders are a reflection of the people. When does this change? How does it change?
Unfortunately, one of the challenges we have is role modeling. We lack good role models, and good people are there. We have very many good people. It's only that sometimes they don't come out. And most of the time what we see from the media, in the society, everything is, like now, just giving an example, if you look at what is happening between the county government of Nairobi, and KPLC and all that, So what does that say to that young Kenyan? When I'm driving and along the way I'm stopped by a policeman and I give 100 shillings in bribe, what does that say to my child? And would I have any moral authority later on to tell them bribing or receiving bribe is wrong? We normally say in unethical practices or in corruption, there are three major players.
Okay.
We call them the unholy trinity. One, you must always have the government or somebody in government involved. You must have the private sector. That could be a business person. And you must have a professional involved. So even in what you are describing, the issues of corruption and ethical practices, you actually see they are aided. There is a private citizen in there who is either giving the bribe to get a business tender or contract or something. There is a government officer who either is supposed to enforce a certain law but is not enforcing because he has received something. But there is also a professional there working out the details to ensure this is well covered. You have not broken, quotes and quote, the law, notwithstanding that is unethical, because there are many ways of working around the law. So that is a challenge we have as a society. And you have asked then how do we get out of it? I think it's not all lost. We still have an opportunity because the topic you have raised, the last thing you talked about, securing the future. We still have an opportunity of securing the future of this country, because if we don't change, we don't have a country. So we still have an opportunity trying to inculcate these values right, even in our education system, right from the beginning all the way up. But also, I hope one day as Kenyans we will get tired and know that where we are driving this nation, where we are driving institutions, is not sustainable. When you look at the cost of corruption, it's very high. It increases the cost of doing business, and therefore investors are running away from this country because it's not sustainable, it's not profitable for them. It is resulting to collapse of organizations. In the media, there have been a lot of institutions of late which have been collapsing because of poor governance, and so many other ills to the society. And all this, what it's leading to is more poverty and other related consequences.
Right.
So I hope one day, as at our individual levels, at the leadership level, we will soon realize that what we are doing is not good for us, is not good for the society.
Okay, so we've gone through a place whereby there's been lost hope. There's been the cancer of poor leadership and lack of good governance. But we're saying, okay, we've seen that. And even though we continue to see it every day, what are the chances of us going to a place where this morality can be restored, where hope can be restored and even renewed? How and what do we actually do?
I would say trust is the currency of leadership. And as the currency of leadership, you build trust by constant deposits. Now, if you withdraw and over-withdraw your deposits, then you have what we call trust deficit as a leader. So if you get to that position of trust deficit, that's what we are talking about today, where people have lost trust in some of us who are holding leadership positions. So the question therefore you ask is, how can we restore that trust? It takes a lot of efforts to build trust through consistent deposits of the good things, the ethics, the values that we talked about earlier, consistently depositing them. It takes just 1 second to overthrow that, and you lose the trust with the people. And you don't have to tell people, trust me, because we should trust is earned. We trust you because you have built trust consistently over time. However, once the trust is lost within that fraction of a second, there is still hope that you can still rebuild that trust.
Yeah.
It's only that the process of rebuilding it may take a little longer and it may be very painful. You may require to take a bit of sacrifices for you to rebuild that trust. There is a parable that Jesus gave of a guy called the prodigal son. He lost trust with his father and he demanded, give me all what belongs to me. He went and did whatever he did in a foreign country, but while he was there, he realized his mistakes and reasoned, aren't there servants in my father's house? What if I harbored myself and went back to my father and asked for forgiveness? And that's what he did. And he regained that trust. In fact, the father did a very big celebration just to celebrate his lost and found son. So you need first to swallow that pride and realize that I have messed up. If I was the CEO entrusted with the Institute's resources, I have put my heart where I was not supposed to put. Instead of just defending myself and justifying my actions, I need first to own up what I have done and appreciate that actually what I have done is wrong. And also be ready to face the consequences, because by just apologizing, that does not mean that you will not face the consequences. And I think that is the gap we are having in Kenya, where people can do anything they want, they can, and they just go scot-free. They should get to a position where they face the consequences of their. If we do that, then we will regain trust from the public. Final example I want to give is of another king. He was called David. He went, messed up, and slept with somebody else's wife. But unfortunately, he tried to cover up, did a number of other things, including killing the husband so that he can cover up. But eventually, David was able to restore that trust. And again, it was through accepting what he had done and repenting, but that did not remove necessarily the consequences. In fact, a very harsh judgment was passed against him by God, and which he had to suffer. So as a nation, we must ensure that it's very painful for people who are abusing the public trust. And if we do that, then we are able to restore that trust. But without consequences, then people continue doing whatever they are doing, knowing there is nowhere you are going to take them.
Wow. Do you think that people will get to that place where they're morally indicted to then say, actually, you know what? The people of Kenya have trusted me to do something and I've messed up, and let me come back on my own. Do you, if you're going to use the example of David, do you think you can get to that point whereby folks are actually saying, okay, I messed up. Let me see how I can fix it, really?
This is not only a problem in our country, but maybe largely in our region, that is the African region. Quite a number of our nations are suffering from the same, where you have leaders who have messed up and they continue insisting they want to stay in their positions, fight to the last, and they are using public money even to fight in courts of things that everybody can clearly see what they did is wrong. So what I think, and I think this is more of a wish, and I hope it will come true very soon, is that at one point, because what we are doing is not sustainable. When you talk about governance, one word is very important: sustainability.
Right.
Sustainability is thinking about tomorrow. What I'm doing today, will I have an organization tomorrow if I continue doing whatever I'm doing? What we are currently doing is not sustainable. And to some extent, when you look, people are saying, now this year Trump has happened. And one of the things that, of course, we can see direct effect is even the cut of aid and all that. I think one of the challenges we have also had is these foreign aids, which sometimes have also been used in African countries used by foreigners to come and, I would say, quote unquote, bribe our leaders. And you find sometimes it's not very, I know that can be a very metabolic subject. However, foreign aid has its own implication on governance of a country.
All right.
So we also need to, as we proceed, as we progress, and as nations, other nations, foreigners continue to tighten, because some of them are also demanding for us to invest in your country, for us even to give you that aid. We need to see certain parameters of good governance put in place. As that continues, then you find as a nation, as a leadership, we have nowhere to go. We have to fix our own problems, because if we can get to a place whereby you mess up with the education system, you mess up with the health sector, even yourself and your children have nowhere to go. So you still face the same institutions that you have messed up. So I wish we can get to that place. That is the only time that you say as a leader, because I'm suffering like the rest, then I have to. But as long as I'm able to escape the consequences, and I leave the rest facing the consequences of my actions, then I have a safe haven where I can hide. Then unfortunately we will be this for a bit longer.
Do I hear you to be saying that when friendly countries give us aid or grants, that of necessity they don't mean well for our country, that the only purpose is to try and bribe our leaders?
Not all. We have very good, and even as an institute, we work with donors and partners. They are very good partners and donors. But I also am aware there are also other donors and partners who come in African continent, not because they are interested in the sustainability of the society, but for their own interests as a country. And one of the questions we must always be asking, why would we as Kenyans pay taxes, our hard-earned money, and go and maybe give to another country? What is the deal there? So those are, I did my first degree was in political science. And one of the things we delved in is the political economy. At the global level, those are the political calculations countries make. You want to influence another country, and therefore one of the tools you use is aid. So not all aid is bad. There are people who actually genuinely want to help, just like maybe some of us are helping your relatives are here and there. And you are doing it from a genuine, you just want to support.
True.
But we also are aware there are other partners who have not very clean motive.
But I don't understand. This is what I don't understand. They are clear about their motives. Are we clear about why we receive the money? And how is it that somebody whose motives may not necessarily be good or clear, how is it their fault that their motives are not clear? That's their motive. That's what they intend to do. Okay? It's theirs. They're clear. They want to influence. They want to bribe. They are clear. Okay? Now.
And we know.
Yes. Now, if there's that clarity, how is it that their fault? Do they force our leaders to take money? No. From what I have observed over time, we're bound to go to them and to say we need. Isn't it? There's some who say we can help you with this. You seem to have a problem with water. We have an entity that, and again, you studied a political economy. It will tell you also that part of the reason they do that is to also expand the market of their industries. If I help you with water, and the guarantee that it's an arid area and want to make it reach the person who's furthest from the source, they'll be piping. Where do you think these pipes are going to come from? Yes, okay. And at some point they'll require repairs, won't they? And there'll be yet another area. So this is a reality that we live with in the world. The problem seems to be us. We are the ones who seem to be slow to catch on. We don't seem to be clear in learning and understanding that whenever you see someone doing what they're doing and it benefits them, why don't you imitate it and do something that benefits you and your people also? Because the businesses of the countries that help us with these things benefit immensely. you know full well that when someone talks about aid, it's not as though they just give you cash money. No, they give you equipment, they give you personnel. And these personnel are paid by this same money that they've given you. The equipment they've given you are part of the total sum that is given to you. And that equipment will require repairs, won't it? And where do you think you're going to go for the repairs? What I'm saying is, I think our biggest problem is we don't know how to look after our own interest.
I think it goes back to where we started, the issue of ethical leadership. There's the same debate we keep on having as a continent about the effect of colonization 50, 60, 70 years down the line. We are still blaming the West because of our problems. And yet there are other regions in the world which were colonized
as well,
just like us, and they have managed to move away from. So it is still boils down to that same problem. However, the reason why, because sometimes, as human beings, we are very good at pointing others. And it is said as you point others
for pointing
at you. And even as a country, we are very good at pointing the leadership, but we are also not very quick in asking what is our contribution as citizens to the mess that we are finding ourselves in.
We've now gotten to the heart of the matter.
So if we answer that, if at individual level, I answer that, what is my contribution and what do I need to do? Then that will resolve the issue. But the problem is, I do a lot of capacity building as an institute. We do a lot of capacity building and trainings for various institutions, government, private, circles, NGOs, and all that on matters governance. And every place, at every cadre of leaders you talk to, they always tell you about the leaders. And so at one point you ask, who are the leaders? Who are these people who are called? Who is government? Because even if you are talking to government, they tell you, the government is...
of the people.
Yes.
By the people.
Yes. So the problem is what we started with, is the morality in the society. That is the challenge we have as a people. We need to have a place where we are getting to a reset button and realize that whatever you are doing is not good for us and for the society.
Now, that said, I am coming to a point of, you spoke about trust, and from the little that I know, in order to rebuild that trust, and even to build trust whatsoever from whichever level, there's need for communication, and very, very importantly, understanding. Because I could say one thing, but you might not comprehend it just the way I said it. Some have argued that how you receive it is not my problem, but I think there's need in how you communicate as well. If you followed closely our governance, electorate versus, leaders relationship, there's been that concern about we need genuine conversations, and I've had that for the longest I have been alive. Or let's have an honest conversation. So we see committees sitting down, like NADCO is the recent one, where people are saying to move forward, let's have this conversation. Now you're seeing a broad-based government right after Gen Z's conversation, but there's a section of Kenyans who still say this is betrayal. I'm getting to a point where I'm asking myself, when we talk about genuine conversations as a nation, in order for us to move forward, how do you think, from your lens, this should be handled in a way that every other person in this country, whether you're a politician or you're just in the health sector, is actually put on the table for genuine national conversations that will rebuild the trust in the country?
Yes, it's good to have conversation, but sometimes I don't think conversation is a problem, because we already know what we need to do.
Absolutely.
I started by saying everybody knows the right thing. No one can say that we don't know what we need to do. In this discussion, you have already raised a number of things that need to be done, even before we had that conversation. So it's a matter of goodwill in implementing. Sometimes consultation, whether it's at organizational level, consultations are good, but sometimes we also use them just as a scapegoat when we don't want to do what we need to do, and then we put committees, task forces, all these kind of manner of things just to pass. Just to pass time. But at the end of the day, actually, even before we set those committees and task forces, and I'm not only talking about at the national level, even at the institutional level, as an organization, most of the time as a CEO, I already know exactly what needs to be done. but because you want to maybe satisfy the staff members and let them be seen as if you are doing something, then you set a committee just to manage their psychology. Which is not the best way as an ethical leader to do. So just do the right thing. You know what is the right thing, just do it. And over the years, most of these things have been documented. If I'm the CEO of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, I'm not the first CEO.
Neither will you be the last.
And I'm not the last. Yeah. There have been others before me. There are documents which have been developed over years. There are recommendations. There are policies. I only need to look through what is required, is already documented, but sometimes we waste a lot of time in boardrooms in the name of consultations and conversations just to escape doing what we ought to do. Yeah.
Is there a direct connection between not doing the right thing and what I would see as regressive development? But if we don't do the right thing over time, we can't see ourselves actually moving forward, whether on a personal level or at a national level. Is there a connection between the two?
Yes. The truth of the matter is, at a personal level, if I may start from there, it may take time. You may think you are hiding, you are very clever, but it may take time, but one day the truth will find you out and the consequences will be there. So even whether you are a leader, whether you are just a private citizen, whatever you are doing, simple things as bribe, because bribe nowadays have become very simple, is the norm. Whether is that bribe you are giving, whether is the complex issues in our marriages of cheating on our spouses, whether is whatever you are doing, one day you'll be found out and you face the consequences. So even as a nation, as an organization, when you refuse to do the right thing, what you ought to do, put in place the proper governance structures, put in place the proper governance processes and procedures, ensure that you recruit people based on merit, not based on tribalism and favorism and nepotism. Ensure that all the policies that you have are geared towards promotion of ethical leadership, ethical culture. If you fail to do that, it will still come to bite that organization. And that's why we are seeing today a number of organizations coming down. Some, if it's where we had invested our monies, they have collapsed. That's why we are seeing investors running away. That's why we are seeing some of our organizations, investors don't want to invest because when they look at the governance practices in organization is not right. So yes, the answer is there will always be consequences, and that explains where we are as a region. Yeah.
Do you see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel?
Yes, there is a light, and it takes collective efforts and your little contribution. The late Wangari Maathai gave a story of a hummingbird who would go and just fetch a drop of water, go drop it in a burning forest. It took the bird many years, but eventually quenched the fire. It may take your little contribution combined with somebody else, and as you do that, there are people who will come and support you. We can change this nation. As an Institute of Certified Secretaries, our mandate is promotion of governance, and among the realizing that we have a responsibility as a responsible corporate citizen to contribute to the ethical leadership and governance of this country. We have come, for instance, with a number of initiatives, whether it's capacity building in regard to governance and ethics across all sectors, whether it's a program we run called Champions of Governance Award, where you go to institutions and assess their governance practices, whether it's of late we are starting a program where we are thinking of how to offer pro bono governance and ethics programs to institutions who are suffering financially but suffering also on governance deficits. So each and every institution, and of course even the talk of this morning, the theme of this morning is also the theme of our annual conference, which will be in April 22nd to 25th in Mombasa on ethical leadership. And that is one of the ways as an institute we are seen of giving back to the society, and ensuring that we continue with this conversation towards healing the nation and restoring that trust for purposes of a future society.
I mean, I want to thank you for doing that. I think it's good for us to take what I like to call a pit stop every now and then and review some of these things, and restoring that, morality and that trust is something that's definitely very important. So thank you for being in the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. Jeremiah Karanja is the CEO of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, and he's been our guest this hour as we look at some of these very important issues in terms of morality and trust, good governance and ethical leadership. Thank you for being part of Kenya's biggest conversation this Wednesday morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.